Welcome back! Today we're talking about your top 5 go-to knitting stitches. We're going to start with garter stitch. That's of course always a crowd pleaser. It's very easy because you're just doing the knit stitch over and over. And when you use bigger yarn, it looks more like ramen noodles. But it's nice, compact, easy, simple stitch. Okay. Now to start, I'm going to do the long tail cast on. There's a few different types of cast ons you could do, but I prefer the long tail cast on. A good way to tell how many stitches a way to see how long you should make it, or how to get however many stitches you're looking to get on there would be to kind of wrap it. Like, let's say I want to do 10 stitches, wrap it 10 times. And a little extra. Okay, now you want the short piece to be toward you, and then you make a little slip knot. And you take your two fingers, your index finger and thumb, and kind of pull it tight. Not too tight, but snug. Then you go in front of the thumb, pull up underneath the index finger, and pull through. Under, over, under, over, under, over. So you have your desired quantity. Okay, now you want to leave a little tail to weave in at the end, but it can get in the way and confuse you when you're knitting. So I like to do a little bunny ears and make a bow. Get it out of the way. There. Okay, now you're going to start by taking your needle and going underneath that first leg there, straight through. So you make kind of a little X. Then you take your working yarn and you yarn it over through the middle. And then you take your right needle and go underneath this leg of yarn and pull it off. That's simple. Let's do it again. Go under, make your little X, bring the yarn over, pull it up with your needle, and off. In, over, pull up, off. And with the knit stitch, okay, so it has two names, the knit stitch and garter stitch, but it's the same thing. And with it you just do every single row the exact same, and you can cast on any number you want. So it's definitely your most low maintenance stitch. So we go back around and do that again. Let's go in, bring it over, pull it up and off. Under, off. After a while, you'll pick up speed, consistency. Well, consistency comes with practice. You really just want to keep doing this again and again, you know, until it's ingrained in you, I guess. Because everything is really just 2 stitches. I always find it a little odd that all these different patterns are called stitches, because at the end of the day, it's really just knit stitch and purl stitch. Moss stitch and raspberry stitch, that's just a combination of knit and purl. So they're like stitch patterns, not really stitches. Anyway, that's always gotten to me. It's like, well, is there really just 2 stitches? So yeah, you're just knitting and purling. Everything, all these daunting patterns, you're like, oh my gosh, how'd they do that? It's all just knits and purls. You just gotta know how to do those. But at the end of the day, it's easy. It'll come to you, because it's just at its core knit and purl. Excuse my issues with words today. Words not coming out right. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you're starting to see the little beads. Okay, so that's, you keep going and it'll look like that. Yeah. Now, as I'll go on in more depth in another video, you can change how it looks, how big it looks, how small it looks, depending on your needle size, depending on the yarn you use, all that. We'll go into that more later. But there you go, garter stitch. Now let's move on to our next one, which is the stockinette stitch. Now everybody uses stockinette stitch. It's how you get your sweaters looking so drapey. The stitch you see people with the sweaters and things that they're making on their centro, it's this stitch, you know, the stockinette stitch. So after a while, you can eyeball how much yarn you could do. You don't always have to wrap it. If you're just doing a small swatch, you know, a small piece is fine of yarn. Can we close it under and over? Yet again, it doesn't matter how many you cast on. But doing something with the tail is important, because, like, let's say I don't have that there. You might accidentally grab the short piece and use that, and then, you know, then your working piece will be down here, and you'll be like, oh no, I have no more yarn. And then you'll have to frog it, which is rip it back. Rip it real good. Like ribbit, frog it. So you don't want to do that. So try to avoid using your little piece. I find it best to just wrap it so it's obvious that it's your tail. Okay. Now I'm using circulars, but I'm flat knitting. And I'm going to go into that more in the next video. But, so flat knitting is back and forth. So the first row with stockinette is the knit row. What we just learned. And go through, pull up, pull off. On the second row, we're going to purl. Now purling, when you purl, you bring your yarn forward, and then you go underneath that first leg, and you take your tail and you yarn it over the first needle, and you pull your needle under and off. So let's look at that again. Go under the first leg, yarn over, pull down, under, off. Yarn over, pull down, under, off. But don't completely pull it down, just, just a little bit. Under, off. And I would suggest just purling and just knitting for a while before you put these two together, because you might get a little confused. I did at first, at least. So, and you pull it up, and you go back to knitting. So you're just alternating between a knit row and a purl row. So your knit row is going to look smooth and have the V's. And your purl row is going to have the bumps. So if you're like lost, you're like, oh gosh, which row is this? If it's nice and smooth and has the V's, then it's your knit row. If it's bumpy and has the bumps, that's the purl row. Now when we go into knitting in the round, which will be in another video, you'll see that knitting in the round is actually easier than flat knitting, because you're not going back and forth, and you don't have to purl, you just knit, and you end up with the stockinette stitch. So knitting in the round, you get stockinette stitch, not garter stitch. So it is actually way easier than flat knitting. Okay. Now stockinette it's nice and clean and drapey and very thin. So if that's the look you're going for, stockinette is perfect. But stockinette also curls. So when you're doing stockinette in a project, I would suggest doing a ribbing first, or seed stitch or garter stitch, something to kind of anchor it so it doesn't curl. If you're making like a cardigan or a sweater or something, it's fine, because you're probably going to have ribbing, and the edges, you can add ribbing to the edges later, so that's fine. But if you're making like a dishcloth or something, I would do some sort of edging. Now you can block it to make it flat, but it's never really perfectly flat, and it does look a little better with some sort of edging on it. So those are my thoughts on stockinette. Okay, next we're going to do the 1x1 rib. Now, you can also see the effect you're creating. Stockinette, it doesn't have as much give as a rib stitch does. You want something a little thicker and stretchy, rib stitch is great. Oh, and the 1x1, both the 1x1 and the 2x2 rib look the same backwards and forwards, so it's a reversible, just like garter stitch is reversible. Stockinette is not reversible, unless it's in the round and it's in a tube, then it all looks the same. Oh, yeah, actually seed stitch. All of these are reversible. I didn't realize that I chose all reversible. So the ones we're working on today are all reversible. All right, so now we're going to do the 1x1 rib. So I'm going to cast on an even number of stitches. going to alternate in the same row. So we're going to start with a knit. And then purl. Knit. And purl. Okay, so just alternating every other stitch. Now you're going to start the next row on a knit, but if, like, let's say that for some reason it came up with a purl, because you may not always, depending on how you do it, you may not always have the next one be a knit. So the way to identify, like, let's say you're lost. The way to identify is the knits are V's and the purls are little bumps. So knit the knits, purl the purls. That's a little bump, so that's going to be a purl. After a while, this all becomes second nature. You can just watch a show while doing this. Not even looking. Okay, now you're starting to see your pattern form. And you'll just keep doing that for however long you want. And there you have it. You have that nice stretchy material. It's great for the end of garments, or you can make an entire garment out of the rib stitch. You know, play with it, have fun. You can mix, you know, put these together, or mix and match in your pattern. Alright, let's do the 2x2 rib. 2x2 rib is great. It's the usual ribbing you do at the end of a sweater, but you can also do the 1x1 ribbing. I've seen it both ways. The 2x2 gives you a little more shape. It pulls in more. It's like you can tell right here even. It looks like, let's say this is a mini sweater. It gives you an hourglass figure. It kind of pulls in, which is nice. It's very flattering stitch. It's good if you want the bottom ribbing to pull in a little more than the top stitch. You know, look, it gives it a certain effect. Okay. Okay. Again, the little piece goes into the front. And this you want to cast on an even number of stitches. Okay, so you're going to start by doing 2 knit stitches. Knit 1, 2, and then 2 purl stitches. Purl 1, 2, and you're just alternating that back and forth in each row. Knit 2, purl 2. I mean, it's in the name. Spoiler alert, that's how you do it. Knit 2, purl 2. All the way down the row. And then you'll just do that exact pattern to your desired length. Oh, I messed up. I guess this one started with a purl. So here's an example of messing up when you, I purled the knits and knitted the purls. So what I ended up creating was the seed stitch. When you knit the purls and purl the knits, you end up with seed stitch. How do you fix this? Easy enough. Like, oh my gosh, what did I do? I have to frog the whole thing. No. So you just take one loop off at a time and put it back on. So what I'm doing is I'm taking this thread out and then putting the loop back on the hook, or back on the needle. So you just slip it off, pull your working yarn out of it while holding onto the loop. You don't want to lose your loop. And then sticking that loop back on the needle. All the way to where you messed up. I mean, I've done it this way for 2-3 rows sometimes, just because it's easier to control than to take it off the needles altogether and try and catch the stitches. That can be a lot more daunting. Okay, so I messed up the very first stitch too. So what you do is you pull it out, but then you have to go back to your previous row. So pick it back up and pretend like we're back on the first row again. So as you can see, there's 2 purls here and 1 knit. So this one is a knit. So I'll just go back in and reknit that piece and turn it around, and you're good as new. And start over. Now you can pay attention, unlike me, and see that the first 2 stitches were purl stitches. Now you can go in and do it right. Purl the purls and knit the knits. So 2 purls. But it's good to mess up, because then we know how to fix it, you know. Now knit 2. Hope is never completely lost. You know, even if it's a really intricate project, you can put in lifelines to save things, which we'll go on to later, but it's basically just threading through a row that you finished to save it. That way, if you have to rip back, you don't rip back very far. Lifelines can be quite useful, especially if you're doing intricate lace or something. Okay, here you can start to see it form. 2 knits, 2 purls, 2 knits, 2 purls, 2 knits. And you end up with that. No, not that. With that. I was following the blue color. I confused. Yeah, this is nice. Really good at cinching things and Gives it a very nice look. Now we're going to do the seed stitch on purpose instead of by accident. Okay. Okay, so now we're casting on an odd number of stitches. I find that this is the best way. There are different ways to do this, but I like this method the best because it's the easiest. You just knit and purl every single row. Because it's odd, it'll offset. So let me show you what I mean. Just knit and alternate knit and purl every other stitch. Knit, purl. Okay, now your next row is going to be a purl, but you're going to knit it. So you get your seed stitch pattern, but you don't have to do anything different. You just keep doing your knit and purl every single row. So normally you purl the purls and knit the knits, but this time you're knitting the purls and purling the knits to create this effect, this nice little pebble effect. It can be very easy to create the seed stitch by accident by knitting the purls and purling the knits. So watch that when you're making your ribbing. Remember when I first did my ribbing, I'm like, what is this? What did I do? I ended up with a seed stitch rib, which is cool too. I mean, it's nice, but it wasn't what I was going for. Yeah, I was going for the 2x2 rib. So yeah, just be aware of that. If it's an odd number of stitches, you will get the seed stitch when you're doing a ribbing. So when you're trying to do ribbing, make sure it's even. Alright, so there you go. Look at those cute little guys there. We'll do one more. Knitting the purls. That's simple. There you go. Now that is a great thin textured stitch. You know, you want to make a simple summer top that has a little character to it. Seed stitch is great. It's great for bags. Love it. Okay, yeah, I think that's everything. Which will be your favorite stitch? When you start knitting in the round, it might end up being stockinette stitch because you got that nice drape and that's all you do is knit and just keep going, and it's monotonous but fun when you're first starting out. So, whoop. All right. Thank you for joining me. You have a great day.